The first time he saw Seabiscuit, the colt was walking through the fog at 5 in the morning. Smith would say later that the horse looked right through him, as if to say, "Who do you think you are?" He was a small horse, barely 15 hands. He was hurting too. There was a limp in his walk, a wheezing when he breathed. Smith didn't pay attention to that. He was looking the horse in the eye. He was the son of Hardtack, sired by the mighty Man-O-War, but the breeding did little to impress anyone at Claiborne Farms.
Get rid of him.
At 6 months, he was shipped off to train with the legendary trainer Sonny Fitzsimmons, who, over time, developed a similar opinion of the colt.
Is that a racehorse or a lead pony?
The judgment wasn't helped by his gentle nature. Where his sire had been a fierce, almost violent competitor, Seabiscuit took to sleeping for huge chunks of the day and enjoyed lolling for hours under the boughs of the juniper trees. His other great talent was eating. Though half the size of other colts, Seabiscuit could frequently eat twice as much. Fitzsimmons decided the horse was lazy and felt sure he could train the obstinance out of him.
I want you to hit him as many times as you can over a quarter of a mile.
When he didn't improve, they decided the colt was incorrigible. They made him a training partner to better horses, forcing him to lose head-to-head duels to boost the confidence of the other animal. By the time he was 3 years old, Seabiscuit was struggling in 2 cheap claiming races a week. Soon he grew as bitter and angry as his sire Hardtack had been. He was sold for the rock-bottom price of $2,000. And of course, it all made sense. Champions were large, they were sleek, they were without imperfection. When they finally did race him, he did just what they had trained him to do. He lost.
Welcome back. I love that clip because I think it talks pretty clearly about what happens to a lot of us growing up. You know, we wonder why we have the issues and the hang-ups and the struggles we have, but most of us are doing just what we were trained to do. We just didn't know we were being trained. We're trained to lose, trained to be lost. Last week we talked about that there's something deep that we all bring to this world. We talked about God meant something when he meant you, and that you matter. But what we believe about ourselves matters too, matters deeply. And just like that little movie scene, Seabiscuit, talking about a horse, but you know, it's such a reflection of how we are. You know, what we think our identity is, what we think our value is, what we think our destiny is, it matters. Because we will live up to that, whatever that is. And if we think it's something that's not true, then how are we ever going to get over the issues and the struggles and the things that we have? But see, that it's not just us. It's built into our fallen nature. There's some kind of genetic or spiritual DNA that we all have. And it started all the way back at the very beginning, the first father, the first human father. See, in Genesis 3:10, you read right there, Adam says, I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. I hid. And part of the thing that we do, the reason we talked about last week, and we'll talk about a little bit more today, about how we construct what we call our normal. Each one has what they call is normal for them. When you think about people that grow up in an abusive household, or people that grow up in a absent father household, that's just their normal. They don't necessarily know any different. And so we have to construct something we think is going to bring us life. We construct something out of the beliefs we have. And that's what Adam was doing, right? He's like, what is really me, what I really think of who I am and what my value is not adequate. So I'm going to hide. And we do that. We all do that. We construct something that we put out for other people to see, the person we think other people want to see. But what's that really? It's us hiding. But see, the truth is, if we know Christ, we are new creations, which is incredible news. We have a new identity, we have a new purpose, and we are free. And the Bible says in Galatians 5:1, it's for freedom that Christ set you free. For freedom. That's what the purpose was. In 2 Corinthians, he says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Well, freedom from what? Right? It's freedom from the baggage. It's freedom from the identity. It's freedom from all the things that are not true that are holding us back. And see, if the promise of the gospel is truly life, as Jesus says in John 10:10, I've come to give you life and give you life to the full. Why don't we experience that more? Why don't we experience more life to the full? I mean, if you think about your last week or the last month, how many days would you say, I had life to the full? Versus how many days would you say, okay. Or even days you went, those were bad days. I mean, just bad happened. Now, maybe it's just me, but does anyone out there have more days that you go, I had life and life to the fullest as God intended? Who has more days that way than the other ways? Right, exactly. Right? All of us are there. All of us are stuck in something that we all want. There's got to be more than this. There's got to be more life. So why don't we experience that more? Why do we continue to live in fear? Why do we continue to struggle to create some kind of self-made identity that we present to other people? Why do we get stuck there? See, there's a reason, even despite our best intentions, we struggle with the same sins, the same habits, the same failings, the same thoughts, the same anxieties, the same garbage that just weighs us down, even though we might not want to. In Romans 12:2 it says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what that is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. And see, if our mind and our inner thoughts were already aligned to God's good and perfect and acceptable way, the Bible wouldn't have to tell us to do it, right? Paul wouldn't have to be reminding us, hey, you need your mind renewed. If our minds were renewed and we were all good, right? So Paul is saying, hey, this is something we have to embrace, something we have to step into, something we have to do, be a part of, to renew our mind. You know, there's a reason that we have to be transformed. And unfortunately for a lot of us, when we think about what needs to be transformed or what needs to be renewed, we're kind of stuck in what I call try harder Christianity. Right? You need to just try harder. You have a lot of anxiety, just try hard to not be anxious. You don't feel close to God, well, just try to be closer to Him. Try to read more Bible or pray more. Nothing wrong with those things. But it's all kind of driven and out of this kind of self-push, this self-try hard, this what I call discipline. You know, we try to discipline ourselves into finding that life, to renewing our mind. And again, there's nothing wrong with discipline. You know, but ultimately trying to will your way into the life that God has for you is, at best, just going to be temporary. At best. It does work for a while, but deep down, if we don't solve those deeper core heart questions, discipline will never work. It'll never work. And we'll just get stuck in the same traps, the same attitudes, the same temptations, despite those attempts. And so why? We talked about this last week. It's because we're all born with these core questions. these core questions to know who we are and why we matter and what we're here for, and to receive those answers from the voice of a father. And most of us, the first voice we hear of a father is our dad's. By design. By design. See, those core questions, those aren't accidents. God put those core questions in us so that he could answer them. So that he could answer them. And Christianity's heart is really about finding a life with a good and true father. I mean, it literally is all over the Bible, and especially all over the New Testament. The word, I actually looked this up this week, the word father is used in the Bible 1,511 times. In second place is sin, which is mentioned 400 times less. Love, anybody have any guess how many times love is mentioned? I mean, love is, supreme, which it is. 504. The word mother, 306. The word obey, anybody have any guesses? I'm going down if you can't tell. Obey, I mean, is obey important? Right, it is. 158. How about forgive? You're close, it's 102. So the word father is used. Now, all those uses aren't in context of God as father, but it's still, the only word that beats it is the word God in the Bible. God has 4,208. So the word father is the second most used word in the whole Bible. And unless you think that, but they're talking about, especially if you read through the book of Matthew, the first 3 chapters, it's probably like 600 times there alone, right? But if you read about the life of Jesus, all over the place, he's always, always referring to his relationship with who? His Father. In fact, Jesus alone uses the word Father, referring specifically to his Father, 192 times in the Gospels. It might be important, right? I mean, Jesus himself, 192 times, uses the word Father, speaking to his Father, speaking about his Father, talking about our connection with the Father, 192 times. And that's just the times it's mentioned. Because not every word of Jesus was ever captured. But when you look at the ratio, a relationship with a true and good Father seems pretty important. But it's because that's how God designed it. He wanted us to understand how to live in this genuine, gut-level, honest connection with the true Father. Knowing that how God designed our world, how he designed us, was that was the one connection that was so essential to knowing who we are and whose we are. Knowing what we're worth and knowing what our destiny is. What's our calling? Why are we here? Why am I here? Me, David Ellis, here right now on this earth, 2022. Why am I here? Why was I born, and why was I born now? What is it that God has for me to do as part of his kingdom? So he knows that's where those answers, that's where the truth of those answers have to come. Now, a mother's role is extremely important, and this isn't a comparison at all. In fact, how I tend to think of it, or how I think God has designed it, is that a father implants and a mother nurtures. They're both critical. But a father, even physically, if you think about the physical act of creation, of procreation, right? A father's implanting a seed, a mother's nurturing it. You can't have one without the other. They're both essential. But the father has something that's unique. That father voice, that father role is an initiating force. And the mother's is then that growing and that nurturing. So they're both essential. But that father's, that first step in the creation process, and first step in the whole identity and value and destiny process.